Time for the panel seats at the table, protecting Black power after Calais. This panel gets real. We're pulling together lawyers, organizers, elected officials, economists, and movement leaders to talk about Louisiana versus Calais and what that means for Black America and where we go from here, not just politically. Joining us on the Global Black Economic Forum stage, lawyer and political commentator Elizabeth Booker Houston, the founder and CEO of Onyx Impact, OSA, Executive Director, America Votes, Daria C. Dawson, Executive Director, the ACLU of Louisiana, Alana Odoms, Tennessee Senate Minority Leader, Senator Ramesh Akbari, and from the Center for Science and Democracy Campaign Director, Dominique Sanders. Give them a warm welcome.
Thank you all so much for being here. We are very excited for this conversation, and this is an amazing panel, and I'm very honored to be your moderator today. First, I would love to go down the line, and if you could give just a couple sentences about your background, your bio, and what each of you do, I would love for the audience to know a little more about each of you. If you want to start us, Osa.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hello, everybody. How we doing today? It's the afternoon. Come on, y'all. Hello, everybody. How are we doing today? Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. My name is Osa. I'm the founder and CEO of Onyx Impact. We are a nonprofit research, media, and technology organization. We're dedicated to amplifying Black voices, protecting Black communities in an era of propaganda, right? And so we do this in all types of ways. And the most recent initiative that we have is called Aisha, right? She's a digital AI assistant like Claude, like Chat, that's built on Black history, Black news, Black data. You can download her right now at aisha.ai, and we'll be talking a bit more how we're trying to move more intentionally with this product, with this rollout, and we really hope that y'all will find something exciting with us today.
Thank you. Daria?
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daria Dawson. I am the Executive Director of America Votes. America Votes is an organization that is driven to ensure that every American has the tools and resources to be able to cast their ballot safely, effectively, and efficiently. We work with many partner organizations across the country to ensure that the issues that people care about, whether it is climate, choice, conservation, anything, that they know what those issues are and how to connect that when it comes to their voting power. The organization is about 20 years old, actually 22 years old, and I am the first person of color and the first Black person to lead the organization. So thank you so much for having me.
Alana?
Thank you so much. My name is Alana Odoms. I'm the Executive Director of the ACLU of Louisiana.
Woo woo!
Thank you so much. We are celebrating our organization's 70th year of protecting the civil rights and civil liberties of all Louisianians. And we do that by focusing on the rights of the most marginalized. I, too, am the first African-American woman to hold this role. And when I do that, I honestly think every day about making sure that I am not the last. What our work looks like predominantly is protecting the Reconstruction Amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, making sure that our freedom is protected, that we are no longer in slavery or involuntary solitude, which many times we still are in this state, making sure that we have equal protection under the law, that we are treated properly, have due process, and that we have the right to vote, and that right to vote is equal and counted. And so we are very busy here in Louisiana, as you know. And this staff that we have, it's a mighty staff of 14 people, but we are making impact all across this nation. And we are fighting hard on behalf of all Louisianians to ensure that we have our fundamental constitutional rights.
Thank you, Alana. Senator Akbari.
All right, everyone. My name is Ramesh Akbari. I serve as a Senate Minority Leader in Tennessee. I represent a district in Memphis. So if you've ever been to the National Civil Rights Museum, Beale Street, or Graceland, you have been to my district. I've been in the legislature for about 13 sessions, 12 years. long suffering. I was 29, now I'm 42, and have gray eyelashes. The things that I focus on in the legislature are criminal justice reform. I believe that folks should not be judged for the rest of their lives for the decisions they make on their worst day. Economic development, and making sure that every child can go to a great public school in their community. And some legislation of note, since you mentioned involuntary servitude, I passed the constitutional amendment that reframed involuntary servitude or slavery as a form of punishment in Tennessee's state constitution.
Yes, thank you. And then Dominique.
Thank you. I am Dominique Sanders. I'm the campaign director at Union of Concerned Scientists for the Center for Science and Democracy. I'm an organizer through and through and have a background of democracy reform. At the Center for Science and Democracy, which I know we're getting ready to get into at this panel, we have a lot of research going on talking about electoral system redesign and what it takes to live into a truly representational democracy.
Yes, thank you so much, Dominique. And we are going to get into that next. But I actually wanted to go ahead and kick off this panel by first just setting the stage for this conversation by starting with an explanation of just what the hell happened, right? We know that the Supreme Court made the decision in Louisiana versus Callias, a case that started right here in the state of Louisiana. But I want to get a quick and dirty explanation of what exactly that meant. I'm going to have a question directed first to each of you, but please, if others want to chime in, feel free. But I would like to start with Alana and just giving us a quick and dirty explanation of what happened.
Absolutely. So I don't even want to start with Louisiana versus Calais, because that was a case that was brought by a group of white plaintiffs. What I want to start with is I want to start with the case that was brought by the Robinson plaintiffs. The Robinson plaintiffs were a group of African American people after the 2020 census was found that they were being deprived of their fundamental voting rights because their votes were being diluted. And so they used Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. It is, in fact, the crown jewel of the Voting Rights Act, and it says that you cannot have any discriminatory way of doing your redistricting practices or any other voting practice. And importantly, it's not just about protecting the votes of black people, it's about protecting the votes of all ethnic and racial minorities and anybody that speaks a different language. So these plaintiffs said to the federal district court, our population has increased so much that we deserve to have additional representation in Congress. And they fought that battle in the federal district court, and the federal district court said yes. The state of Louisiana is 33.5% African American, and of the 6 Congress people, you should have 2. That is very, very basic. And so we went through many, many days of testimony, putting in evidence, talking about the history, and the federal courts said absolutely. Now we get to Louisiana versus Calais, and you have a group of white plaintiffs that say, it is discriminatory toward us for Section 2 to provide an opportunity for black people to have a chance to elect a candidate of their choice.
That reverse racism they like to
Reverse,
play.
it is the oldest trick in the book, but it comes back every day. And so the only way that Section 2 provides for a remedy is it says that you must create a district where people of color are in sufficient number such that they can elect a candidate of their choice. And so what the Supreme Court said when they were listening to these aggrieved white folks is that they said, well, does it hurt your feelings essentially that the law is being fair toward black people? And they said, yeah. Does it make you feel bad that you may not be able to have all the seats in Congress? And they said, yeah. And you know what the Supreme Court said? They aligned themselves with white grievance, and they turned their back on the civil rights movement. They turned their back on all of the work that our ancestors had done to be able to get the Voting Rights Act. And they struck down one of the most important pieces of civil rights legislation that we have in this country. And so now what we are faced with doing is we are faced with having to run candidates in hostile territories and trying to ensure that we still have a chance to elect our people. But what Calais really says is that the Voting Rights Act doesn't matter anymore. And if you can find a way to get elected, do your best. But unless your colleagues can establish intentional discrimination, then you don't have a chance.
Can I add to this? 'Cause,
Absolutely.
And y'all have been doing unbelievable work, the ACLU of Louisiana, for years fighting this. But real quick, how many folks here have heard of the Voting Rights Act?
Nice.
A good amount.
Right? How many folks here know that the Voting Rights Act is one of the main things that ended Jim Crow?
Good job.
That is the law that the Supreme Court just eviscerated about, 2 months ago?
That's right. April
months ago.
29th.
A law that essentially ended Jim Crow was just eviscerated by 6 unelected Supreme Court injustices. And they did it You heard me say Supreme Court injustices?
Yes.
Did you hear me say unelected?
Unelected.
And what a lot of folks
One
don't,
of them stole his seat, too. I still claim Mitch McConnell. I think he might be dead. But Mitch McConnell, blocked Obama's appointment, and that's how we got Neil Gorsuch. But anyway.
What I want to also make sure folks know is that just a few weeks after, in another case, again, all of this language is meant to just put up barriers about making sure folks don't know what happened. But a few weeks after they gutted the Voting Rights Act this year, another case in Alabama gutted the 14th Amendment. Y'all, we all know here that the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were pretty important. Right? They said, and I'm not kidding you, the Supreme Court said that not even the Supreme Court saying that maps were racist, because that's what they did a few years ago, not even us saying that maps were racist is enough proof to assume that the maps are racist now. And if the Supreme Court saying something is racist is not enough proof, what then is enough proof? Yeah. It doesn't exist. And so we went from they're taking away voting to they have now undermined the entire 14th Amendment that deals with racial discrimination across everything. Business, healthcare, law, what have you. In the span of a few weeks, while they thought we were not paying attention, that is what has happened. And that is what we need to start fighting today.
And
I
thank you
actually want to piggyback off of two things that were said, because my sister here definitely mentioned these 9 unelected judges on the court. Judges are unelected when it comes to Supreme Court justice, but who is elected to president, who is elected to the United States Senate, determines what the Supreme Court looks like. So if we want to talk about Calais and how we got here, in my opinion, and I'm not a practicing attorney, but in my opinion, this all started in Florida during the 2000 election. Yeah. Because that was when we were at a crossroads as to what the Supreme Court would look like. In my home state of Florida, the vote margin between Al Gore and George W. Bush was 537 people.
How many?
537 people. I'm pretty sure there were more than 537 people partying at the Superdome last night. Mm-hmm. That was the vote margin in which George W. Bush became president and was able to appoint who? The current Chief Justice of the United States. It took them 26 years to get the Supreme Court to look the way that it looks today, with our current president being in a position to appoint not 1, not 2, but 3 Supreme Court justices.
What that Chief Justice write his college thesis on?
I'm sorry, say again.
What did Chief Justice John Roberts write his college thesis on? Ending the Voting Rights Act.
So exactly. So Chief Justice John Roberts, this is going back to a case in the 1980s. So when we were all just born, called Mobile versus Bolden. In Mobile, Alabama, they essentially tried to remove what's called the effects test. So the best way to explain how racism is really acting in our society right now is that the court is telling us, unless somebody comes up to your face and tells you, calls you the N-word or says that you can't participate because they don't like you because you're black, unless they do that, it's not really racism. It's all just fair because we're a post-racial society.
Which, by the way, undermines long-standing law about what we know as disparate impact, right? Which is
Exactly.
different from intent. And that's where we have, in employment law in many areas, have long acknowledged that. And I do want to go ahead and shift over to Dominique, if that's okay, because I do want to talk about, you know, we've talked about how crazy and terrible this all is, right? But we need to make sure that we talk about what do we do now? After Calais, after all of these cases. And so I know, Dominique, you've worked on structural reform. And one idea that's getting more attention, including from Black-led groups, is proportional representation. And so for folks who are hearing that term for the first time, proportional representation, which I know Alana talked about a bit when she touched on the cases, can you tell us how, well, first of all, what is it? And then how could that strengthen Black political power in a post-Voting Rights Act era?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you heard from a lot of the panelists up here, the Calais decision was monumental, and the last 40 years, Section 2 of the VRA was the primary legal tool that Black voters were using to be able to get a shot at representation and fight back against vote dilution. Now we have hostile courts that are saying, actually, no, you can't use that strategy that Black voters have been using for the past 40 years. So now we need to think about what's happening and how we move forward. Right now, everyone, I hope in this room votes, yes? Yes, okay. We still need to continue to vote, but on top of that, we need to look at our current electoral system. Think back to the last time a candidate of your choice lost, whether that's in the White House or at the school board level. And what we know the most is that at the local level, forms of government, that's where you most immediately feel Black political power. And right now, we have a winner-takes-all system. So when your candidate of choice loses because you aren't the majority, because the winner of our elections have to have 50% plus one of the votes. That's a high threshold. So when you're not the majority and the Black population is only 30% in that district, the Black population then does not get the ability to actually elect a candidate of their choice because they can never get to that 50% plus one threshold. That's not always a problem of just participation. A lot of times, it's the architecture of exclusion in our winner-takes-all system in a single-member district where you only elect one person. Proportional representation changes that solution. And it really, what proportional representation is, it's a family of electoral systems. It's more than one, and I think communities have to be a part of deciding which reform works best for them. But it allows you to, it allocates seats per vote share. So what that means is if you get and have 30% of the vote, then you get 30% of the seats.
What?
It's easy. It's simple. And it really means that you no longer have to have 50% plus one and meet that threshold. Depending on how many seats that district uses, you can actually get representation with 25% of the vote or 30% of the vote. So you don't have to be Louisiana where you're looking for a Black majority and you have to create this 250-mile district to form a Black majority. Proportional representation doesn't need that geographical box. What it means is instead of the state legislature worrying about drawing the lines and how do we crack and pack voters in lines and make sure that they're not the majority. It means that you don't have to be the majority to get representation and get a fair shot of electing candidates of your choice that believe in you and believe in your communities. So proportional representation is, by law, there's a federal law right now where the U.S. House of Representatives have to be winner-takes-all single-member districts, which is our existing electoral system. But there is a bill right now, the Fair Representation Act, that has been introduced in Congress. That's a long fight, but what communities can do right now is actually start looking at moving your city council races, your county commissioner races, your judicial seats, and looking a little bit deeper at the local level and at the state level about proportional representation and what makes the most sense for you, so you can feel good about who you're electing and you can actually get representation even if you don't have the majority.
Thank you for that. And I think that's an amazing example of how we can look at things differently. Just because we've been doing them one way for so long doesn't mean that has to be the path.
Yes, and I definitely want to say we definitely need to be defending the VRA, 100%. But in this moment, we need to be expanding our toolbox. And so proportional representation does not conflict with defending the VRA. It's adding to our toolbox a different strategy that we can get at producing Black representation.
Thank you. And thank you for that work that you're doing. And when we're talking about Black representation, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about what just happened in Nashville, Tennessee. And I'm going to start with you, Senator Ackberry, because we were together in Nashville when they decided to slice and dice up our beloved Memphis, Tennessee, which was the only majority Black congressional district in the state of Tennessee. I know that we have this issue of voter apathy. You know, we asked how many people here vote and got some applause and some cheers, but Black folks, we're feeling like we keep voting and nothing's changing. We're not seeing improvements, it's not getting better. But we know that voting is something that is a long-term strategy and that they would not have attacked Memphis like that if our vote really didn't matter. Can you tell us what are some ways that we can combat that voter apathy and really just really explain to folks this is important and it's something we should all be going to do, to go to the polls to vote?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question because I think that's something that we struggle with really across this nation, right? I can look at Memphis. Our last primary election was in May. 200,000 people who were registered to vote did not vote. Typically in Tennessee, we're 48, 49 in voter turnout. We don't have a problem registering folks. We have voter registration drives constantly. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and the Links. We love to go register people to vote. But the bottom line is they're not getting a reason to come back out. And a lot of that has to do with two or three things. We kind of struggle with this. One, I look at my grandmother's generation, I look at my mom's generation. Those are people who directly saw through legislation like the Civil Rights Act, like the Voting Rights Act, the importance of voting. They saw when they voted they could elect the first Black mayor in Memphis or the first Black member of Congress, right?
And the first Black mayor in Memphis was not that long ago.
In 1991, I was in the first grade. Or even electing someone like the first Black president of the United States. You have a lot of folks now, like in my district, 18 to 24-year-olds, only 1% of the population votes. I think it's a number of factors. One, they do think, hey, voting doesn't really make a difference. And I think part of that is people think on a federal or president, that's what they think about. They don't think about the school board or the state legislature that has in Tennessee, a $60 billion budget. We control what kids read, what they get to do at school, all sorts of things. How long you're gonna go to jail, the speed limit, anything you can think of. And so people don't think about that. And the last thing I'll say is, particularly in a city like Memphis, where we have a 24% poverty rate, people are just trying to survive, right? They are dreams of getting to thriving. And unfortunately, voting just doesn't seem like the way to get there. Now, for me, this is my 12th year. I ran in 14, 16, 18, 22, and I'm on the ballot now. I don't make promises I know I can't keep, right? So I think as candidates and elected officials, we have to do some reflecting as well. Like, people don't trust elected officials because sometimes we don't give them a reason to trust us. Two, they think we make all this money, and I'm like, I make $29,000 a year. I have like 7 other jobs. So I think more voter education is important, and not just going to communities when it's election time, right? And then I'll put the burden on those who vote for us. The voting is just the beginning. Holding people accountable once they get there is what really makes a difference. If you don't like how something's going, stop re-electing these people, right? Usually once you get past that first primary, you're good to go. I didn't have any competition in 2022, and I don't have any now. I think competition is healthy. Now, I do like that I don't have to, run that type of election. But so I think those are, we contemplate and talk about this all the time. And I'm going to pick on the DNC because I'm a Democrat. When I was when we were going through this decision in Tennessee, we had no support nationally. Whereas
Insane.
None. Like, if it were not for Fair Fight, Stacey Abrams, the NAACP and Kristen Clark, and the ACLU in Tennessee, we would have been like SOL. And I'll put this caveat on. The NAACP and the ACLU provided general information to all of our electeds, not partisan politics.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
Nonpartisan organization. Thank you.
Very nonpartisan.
I would say, Senator. Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just going to say for folks, again, just to take a step back that don't know, again, within a few days of these Supreme Court injustices eviscerating the Voting Rights Act, we saw state after state after state after state call sessions to eliminate black districts, which is what happened in Memphis after just a few days. And to eliminate a black district in Memphis, because Memphis is hella black.
Oh, very black,
Hella
very
black.
lovely.
64% black.
64%
The blackest
black.
city in the country.
Yeah.
The district was 61% black.
I mean, I remember I got the call, and they were like, "Get on a plane tomorrow."
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because
And I
that's
was
how
like,
quickly
okay.
they were
That's how
doing
quickly
this.
they moved.
They had to split Memphis up into 3 districts.
Just
Yeah.
to dilute our power, the power of black voters, they had to chop us up into 3 districts.
The same politicians telling us that nothing can get done,
Yes,
ever,
exactly.
can call a special session days after a Supreme Court decision lands that no one knew what date it was going to land,
Yeah.
and eliminate a black district overnight. That happened. That has
Yeah.
happened in Tennessee. That has happened
In Louisiana.
Louisiana. That has happened in
Alabama.
They tried
Alabama,
they
tried
tried to
in
do it in
Georgia.
Georgia, and I want to bring up a point about what happens when we come out and we raise our voices because
Well, look at you going to my last question.
there we go.
I love it. So Alana,
they tried
kick
to
it
do it in
off.
Georgia and they did not succeed. They said we wasn't about to have that.
Yeah, and
right?
I would say to that point, it's very important to what the senator said about the voter education piece and how we really do, and I call this as a call to action to everyone in this room because all of you basically raised your hands that you are voters.
Yeah.
Talk to your neighbors, your colleagues, your friends, invite them into this process and remind them that voting is just step 1. Step 1, it is the first step in an engagement process. Democracy is a 365 or 366, 24/7 process. You vote, you hold that person accountable, whether you voted for them or not. You remind them you are their constituent. Your tax dollars pay their salary, regardless if it's the president of the United States or the dog catcher in your county.
Yeah.
You hold them accountable. You go to those meetings. You send those letters. You talk about them on social media. Use all the platforms. Get stuff done. This is why we elected you. And then if they do their jobs, you vote for them again, or you decide, you know what, we gonna look in our community. We gonna recruit people of our own, people who
That's
we
right.
know that we trust to run against you. That is the great thing about this country and democracy, no matter who is in the White House, that is the democracy process. And I think the thing that we mess up as black people and people of color, and I would say this as an organizer, I've been organizing for over 20-something years, you only see people coming to talk to you when it's time for elections. That is how,
Well,
that's how the
people
community
think that
loses faith.
I will have a town hall and no one will come.
Okay, but you are also the exception and not the rule, I will say.
Okay.
Having been one of your constituents, I agree with Daria.
And I
That's
would
a
say,
problem.
yes,
Okay,
you
yeah.
do that, and we have to ensure that people know that this is how you have a conversation with your state senator.
And I think it's
Can I also, oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I think it's also incumbent upon our elected leaders in terms of the way they show up to help teach our community exactly what their
Right.
roles are designed for. Because if you're coming to a school board meeting and you're more concerned about your electric bill, that's not the venue for it. So our school board members need to help teach and educate our community about how the curriculum is designed and what they can do for them. Our mayor has to teach about what levers she pulls or he pulls and how that works. Congress people, the same thing. I just sat on a beautiful panel where a group of judges judges from every level of court came to tell the community
That's great.
exactly what kind of cases they take and how that moves through the system. So a part of holding elected office is not just going to do the job, it's also coming back to community and saying, here's how you hold me accountable, here's what I can do for you.
That's right. And I would also just, yeah, give it up for the ACLU of Louisiana, always and forever. In this moment, in this post-Calais moment, and we keep saying Calais, Calais, Calais. Who is, just aside, who is Calais? Guess where old boy Calais was on January 6th?
He was probably at the Capitol, wasn't he? This fool was at the Capitol.
That's
He should be in
what
jail
who
right
we
now.
are talking
January
about.
6th.
So shocking. Another white nationalist was at it again. My
That is who we are literally talking about when we say Louisiana versus Calais. That's who we're literally talking about when we say who just eviscerated the Voting Rights Act. But in this moment, in this post-Calais moment, in this post-VRA moment, we have to move differently, right? Voting is not enough, right? We've got to look at civic engagement differently, more holistically, right? From direct action to economic sanctions to organizing. Can you spend any amount of your time each month helping out a local organizing organization that is trying to help voters in this moment? Because voters, we don't have the Voting Rights Act anymore.
That's right.
Right? We're going to need to move differently. We're going to need to build power differently. We're going to need to build economic and political power in the same vein at the same time, right? And so I just want to make sure folks know that in this post-Calais moment, it is necessary to do all of the above and to see wins differently. Wins are going to come from voting. Wins are going to come from organizing. Wins are going to come from litigation. Wins are going to come from economic pressure. Wins are going to come from direct action. And we have to be ready as a people, as a community, to step up and step in and support the wins just as much as we uplift these losses.
And I want to pass to Dominique because I see you have
Yeah,
something to say.
and thank you so much. And I think it's really important because the media, not us, of our community, but cycle after cycle, we always see, well, black voters didn't turn out. It's your fault we got the election results that we got. And I don't like that blame, nor do I appreciate that blame coming at my community. So I think education is 100% the way to go, and attacking all different forms of organizing and legally and policy and moving all of that forward. And I think everyone in this room has a role to be able to do that, because what we understand is what the senator said: when votes don't produce results, it does lead to voters not voting anymore, which then leads to being disengaged, which then leads to disempowerment communities, and disempowered communities means unsafe and unhealthy communities as well. So connecting those pieces when we're talking about air quality and pollution and water contaminants and who's testing our water, or the difference between funding a healthcare clinic that needs to open. All of that matters, and making sure it's at the correct avenues and venues is that education piece that we need to be talking about, as well as, again, adding to our toolbox of the VRA and making sure that we are still continuing to fight against all of the attacks on the VRA, but also looking at the other solutions that can work for us and really get us to being healthy and being safe within our community.
I would, go ahead and I'll
Sorry,
get to
I just
my
want to say something
next
really quick.
question.
In Tennessee, you said what now? Oh, in Tennessee, it took, Calais was on Wednesday, special session was called on Friday, we got there on Tuesday, new maps on Thursday. They did it in 3 days, right? So what if we flipped it on its head, right? What if we organized and we did that long-term plan, but also our short-term goals? I think that's what we have to do, because if not now, then when? Like, we are in a situation that we have not been in for, what, since Reconstruction, right? We will see the greatest rollback of black power in state legislatures and in Congress since Reconstruction. Do we want a new era of Jim Crow? Do we want to see the rights that we fought for, that our ancestors fought for, taken away? No. So we got to think differently. We got to meet people where they are. Young people, and I say this, I'm 42, but I used to be young. They don't want to hear your ancestors march for XYZ. They don't care, okay? Some people do, most people don't. They want to hear hey, I got a baby in school. Hey, I'm on SNAP. Hey, I get XYZ. And those are the people trying to take it away. And that's going to take resources. It's going to take money and time. And it's going to be a long-term plan. We didn't get to Calais overnight. They've been planning for decades. And so we got to do the same thing.
So I wanted to, I'm sorry, because I know we're getting a little short on time, but I would love, because I love people to have like useful information they can walk away with, I would love if we could go down the panel, and if you could say one elected position that you think it's really important for everyone to go research, whether, you know, whatever you think is, because we talked about a few on the panel, that people maybe aren't thinking of, right? Because they're always thinking president, senator, and maybe just the congressional rep. If you could go down the line, and each of you say, what elected position do you think they need to go research today when they get home? And we can go in order or however you want to do it. You go
District
ahead.
attorney.
District attorney. There you go.
Your district attorney is the person who has the ultimate authority under every criminal statute in your state to be able to bring prosecution and decide what is criminal behavior and what is not, and has the power to dismiss cases completely. That person is usually 99% of the time a white person, and that person is traditionally coming from a law enforcement background with a tough on crime stance and looking to, unfortunately, keep Black people incarcerated for as long as possible, not necessarily because they intentionally think of it that way, but that is the history. So that is a position that's incredibly powerful. We need more progressive prosecutors. I used to be a prosecutor, but we need somebody at that top level because line prosecutors can't change policy. You need the elected person to be able to have an understanding of mass incarceration. That person needs to have read Isabel Wilkerson Cass. They need to understand Michelle Alexander, the new Jim Crow, and that's the kind of person you want in your DA's office.
Everybody say district attorney.
District attorney.
Thank you.
I would say look at the folks who control the things that are too high. My most favorite story out of the 2025 election was the Georgia Public Service Commission race. In which voters were educated on the fact that these statewide elected officials determine how much your electricity bill is.
That was a great race.
Think about that. Those in power control how you pay your electricity, the air you breathe, the water you drink, what books your children read in school. We got to start thinking about who has the power to determine how I live my everyday life. And I'm not talking about the President of the United States. I'm not talking about your member of Congress. I'm talking about that person who is your next door neighbor.
Everybody say Public Service Commission.
Public Service Commission.
I would say school board, right?
Because that Moms for Liberty.
Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah. Look, in Memphis, our school board's budget is $2 billion. The city of Memphis's budget is just about $1 billion. They control everything.
Can you say that one more time? I'm so sorry. What?
In Memphis Shelby County Schools, so it includes the county, the school budget is $2 billion.
With a B.
With a B. The city of Memphis is just about $1 billion with a B. And so these folks control so many things. How much your teachers are paid for the most part, how long or what type of instruction your kids get. So we have standards set on a state level, but the curricula is decided on a school board level. Who do you want educating your next generation, right? Because people who are not educated, who can't read, have no possibility of upward mobility. Poor health outcomes, usually they will step into a situation where they are involved with the justice system, and most people who are born in poverty will unfortunately die in poverty. I don't think education is the great equalizer because you still have to have opportunity, but it does make a big difference. So I would say school board. And don't say people start with the school board. Somebody asked me, well, what made you run for state rep? Why didn't you start with something easier like the school board, which is insane.
I'm gonna jump on because mine was school board as well, and mine's was school board because of the Calais decision, because the Voting Rights Act was not just about Congress. It oversees everything. And one of the things that we are going to see as a result of Calais is school districts across the South with little Black kids, right, being led by school boards of Moms for Liberty. People who don't only live nowhere near these kids, but are actively trying to harm them. That is what a post-Calais world could look like. And so making sure we know what is happening at the school board level has never been more important.
Yes.
Everybody say school board.
School board.
And
lastly,
Dominique.
yes, really quickly, I guess I'll say the judicial seats are ultimately really, really important. A lot of people cannot name who is over their current district when it comes to judge seats. And that is, I'm with Alana, that's really important when we talk about progressive district attorneys and prosecuting attorneys, as well as judges that are really important when we talk about local criminal justice reform.
Yeah, because if y'all have ever seen those viral YouTube videos of that white male judge who's always like giving the business to the cops and he's like, I'm dismissing this, no probable cause. That man was elected.
Cut him loose, Bruce.
Yes. So we are at time, unfortunately, because this is an amazing conversation with a phenomenal panel. Can I please get another round of applause for our fabulous panel, Asosa, Daria, Alana, Senator Akberry, and Dominique. And I'm Elizabeth, and thank you all so much. Woo!